What's up, Political Soul Food? Welcome back. It's Monday night, and it's been a long weekend. You know how we rock from Monday through Thursdays, and we take a quick break. But now we're back to talk about life, history, politics, culture, education, all that good stuff. The stuff that makes us who we are as people. The stuff that makes and break us. The stuff that create a good society and horrible nation states, dictatorships. The stuff that create poverty, stuff that creates wars, the ideas. And on that note, we're going to talk about something that I just want to express to all of you who listen here. And it's about learning. I want to encourage everybody not to be afraid of learning, not to be afraid to continue to learn their lives. So we're going to have a quick chat tonight about that. And hopefully I can persuade you, if you haven't already decided to be a lifelong learner. I know a lot of people who tune into this podcast already have a similar appetite that I do. But just in case, I just got to remind y'all and encourage y'all, because without you, without our collective work, this world is not going to get better. And I'm not one to leave things to chance. Obviously, I'm not one to believe in fairy tales as well, but I do put a lot of stock in human agency. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Don't be afraid to continue to learn. And if I'm preaching to the choir, let me get an amen on that. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get started, y'all. Let folks know we up in here, Political Soul Food, up here on Monday night. Be right back after this quick break. Well, the break is coming. Wait, here we go. Welcome back to Political Soul Food. It's good to see y'all all here on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. We're going to get started. Tonight's topic is don't be afraid to continue to learn. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to give a quick shout out up to those who are here that I can see. Crystal's a poet up in here. We got my boy Shrew Robinson. When can I come on? Yo, so we want to work on that. I was hoping perhaps Wednesday. So we'll continue this discussion, a private message. We can talk about what we're going to talk about. Gentrification in Harlem. My boy, we grew up together here in Harlem, and we watched things come and go. And so it's definitely going to have a chat on that, bro. So listen, stay up. Maybe we can do something this week. It'd be dope. So right now, I just want to focus on this topic, not being afraid to learn. And it sounds like it shouldn't be a problem. It sounds like, well, duh, who's afraid to learn? Who doesn't want to learn? And when we put it that way, I mean, I don't think people really don't want to continue to learn. But it's what we think learning is, and what the content of learning is that becomes a problem. And so, to be fair, just to break down where I'm coming from, it's more like, don't be afraid to explore other territories of information. Don't be afraid to explore other realms of knowledge that might not come from a source that you are most comfortable with. And that's a tall order to encourage somebody to step away or outside of the terrain that they have probably through their lifetimes established as a good source of information, a good source of truth. So we're gonna chop that up. I want to chop that up. I have to talk about this every once in a while, because here on Political Soul Food, while I'm very much interested in current affairs, talking about what's happening under the Trump administration, what kind of incidents are occurring, or racist acts that are happening, talking about new historical discoveries, about new technologies, talking about inequality and the need for racial justice, and on and on and on. There's something that is underneath all of these issues, and that is how we think, what we think about, what we believe in. And so is this for me? So guess what, guys? I got a lemon pound cake. All right, cool. So this is going to be my snack. Now I have something to look forward to. So I'm going to make sure I do well on this podcast, thanks to my crew over here. So yeah, so this whole idea of learning is a real deal issue, because I see how people sidestep it by erecting sort of defensive statements about, the truth is what it is. So there's a lot of like relativism and subjectivism that pops up. And now, in the school of philosophy, there are some thinkers who really, really do contemplate the truth of subjectivity and objectivity, or relativism. And many believe that there are subjective truths, or everybody has his or her own truth. But in many conversations I get in, a lot of people just use that as an excuse just to stay within their comfort zone, to stay with what they just want to just hold as right. Granted, there are some who feel that, or who know that they know that what they're doing is right. Cool. I'm speaking to y'all as well. Because, I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't any truths, that there aren't any standards that should, in the right context, be unwavering. Fine. Truth, I believe, is circumstantial, in that there are certain contexts where certain actions are appropriate, and then in other contexts, the very same action would be inadequate or improper, outright wrong, immoral. And so I'm not just trying to say, hey, just, accept anything or change your mind about everything. No, I'm not saying that. Basically, I'm saying that we should have a certain baseline criteria for the things that we want to hold as true. And I'm going even further in this podcast to say that there's no criteria to truth that prevents people from continuing to learn, especially in the way we exist as human beings. And in order, for us to really make good decisions as citizens, because this is where it all goes back for me, that there I'm not speaking about learning from a philosophical point of view here, although I do have that interest in studying for studying sake, learning for learning sake. Yeah, I'm down with that. But I'm not. But I'm talking about something else. There's a practical side of learning as well, and that is its benefits for our society. We want food to be healthy, right? We expect the FDA, although it fails many times, to get it right, to let us know if food is good, to place certain regulations on how food is prepared and transported, right? That is knowledge. So learning is useful as well as enjoyable, as well as being moral, right? And first things first, I guess I should admit that there is this moral obligation side, along with the like, just do it because it's great, it's fun, yes. But we have what John Erskine said in his essay, a moral obligation to be intelligent. And I'm telling you, don't be afraid to be intelligent right now. One is fun, but two, it is necessary for our survival. It is necessary for our survival. And, I'm speaking to adults. I don't think there's anyone underage here, but not that I say anything that's not that's not appropriate. I think for the most part, unless I have some guests who need to express themselves in certain language, I stay away from a lot of four-letter words. I don't really do anything like that. But the point is that as adults, yeah, you might be surprised that I'm saying, hey, adults, we got to continue to learn. All right. But guess what, though? Here's how my statement is a little silly, but in a subtle way. Learning is innate. It's going to happen one way or another. You're going to learn. It depends on what you're learning. That's the question, and how you're learning, how you're thinking. You're going to think. Whether you think critically or not is another question. But that's happening. That's happening. So in that way, that's sort of like the punchline at the end for me is that, I'm saying don't be afraid to continue to learn. But in reality, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn more. Even if it's a reinforcement of what you already know, but you're learning more context to put what you know into work, into action. And either way, you will continue to, even if it's just sort of burrowing yourself deeper and deeper into the position that you're taking out for the rest of your life, you're continuing to learn. Even if it's just defense, you're learning how to defend your position. So that's that. So you're going to learn no matter what. You're going to learn no matter what. The issue is if you're going to expand and challenge what you already know, to sharpen how you think in general and sharpen how you think about what you know specifically across the gamut of the domains of knowledge, such as history, religion, and politics. And I don't even need to say science and technology, because science and technology is just inherently about learning more. The whole idea is to learn and understand the principles at play better, because there are always problems, there are always new scenarios that the technology and science find itself being constrained or limited. So, but in the areas of like the social sciences and the areas within culture, we tend to take this claim. We tend to take the position of relativism and subjectivism. Now, I'm not arguing for a hierarchy of culture. So let's just get that out the way, just in case. Because I know I can sound like that. If I heard myself talking, it would be in the back of my head, and I would say, what does this do on Political Soul Food talking about? She's trying to say, is this a setup? Because this could be used as a setup to appreciate that certain people, certain groups are better than others, per se, right? But I'm not taking that claim. I'm talking about very specific kinds of pieces of information, particularly when it comes to our social world, and our historical world, and broadly speaking, our cultural world. For example, learning about other cultures, learning that other cultures exist, learning that the very land that we're on right now is something that was once occupied by others, and it was taken away by force. I want to holler at my homegirl Jessie. Jesse's actually responsible for helping me make some smart decisions and getting the equipment that I have to talk with you on. But so, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for today. What's good? What's good? Yo, I know it's good. So yeah, so so learning about our reality is kind of where I'm getting at right now. People are just taking this reality for granted and not realizing that our reality, has a history, and not only that, the history is shared. We are all part of this story, and we have to understand other people's stories. And I think the minute that we acknowledge or recognize that there are other people's stories, I think we'll start to see that we might have to like renegotiate how we understand our place in time. And some people may disagree with me. I was reading an article about this guy, this professor, an amazing African American historian of racism, and he was making a very strong case about the limitations of education in terms of like curing our society of racism. And I get that. But I do feel that, as G.I. Joe says, and I grew up on G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle. Right? So I feel that while just going to school and reading books and learning will help us understand the world, I know that it won't make a person do the right thing. But maybe I should take a step back and say it won't help everybody do the right thing, but I think that it will create a lot of awareness, because a lot of things that are happening now are done because of a certain kind of ignorance, right? And yes, it is true that a person learning more about the world, about other cultures, might continue to be racist, might continue to push bigotry, sexism. However, I think there are a lot of cases where that could be healed because people are acting from ignorance. In fact, and many of us may be acting out because they were victims of these oppressive demons in our psyche. So one step is learning. Right? And as we, just like a doctor in a sense, as we see the need to get more specific or to try to find a diagnosis that deals with like individuals who have a certain kind of social disease like racism, then we have to adjust for that. Policies, obviously would be important for certain things. Like, we cannot legislate, morality, or we cannot use legislation to force somebody to think in a positive way and be positive. But we could contain certain behaviors, right? And if we go past that, then we're looking at civil war or whatever, which happened, right? But there's a lot of ground between, learning as a sort of form of therapy for the social issues that we're dealing with, and civil war or outright war. So I think we can deal with a lot of what's going on in the middle. And in that way, I think education can be very, very helpful. I've seen many people transform the way they think by coming in contact with stories about race and how slavery, in a sense, has acted on our American society as a force that just sort of permeated, knocking over different dominoes to our present. A lot of people don't notice the dominoes from slavery to today. They don't see the connections between people who are pissed off that they can't have slaves anymore, who began to find other oppressive forms and mechanisms by using law, by using the economic system, by using their cultural influence to restrict other human beings. A lot of people, and some whom I would call friends today, non-black friends who are oblivious to that, who want to do the right thing but just don't understand. And I had a talk with someone who was like, "Yeah, man, I moved to Harlem. I understand you're talking about this gentrification stuff, but I see these black guys, on the corner, and they ain't doing nothing with their lives, this and the third." And I understand what he was trying to say, but then as he continued to talk, it was clear to me that I think this particular person, not everyone I talked to, was oblivious to the effects of Reagan's administration, even Nixon's administration, on the black community in various ways. The funneling of drugs, the draining of resources, the decimation of institutions, the hiding of opportunities to get loans, to own a home, and then when people get loans, the exploitation by hijacking people's interest rates. And as we began to talk about that, and I began to present that or offer an opportunity to learn, he immediately took a step back. He rolled back a lot of his assessments and realized that there's more to the reality that he sees, that his narrative is not appropriate. In these ways, in these kinds of conversations, obviously with certain people, learning can be very impactful. But before I dive too deeply into the positive effects of learning on race relations in America, let me just go back to speak about learning in general. Let me continue to motivate you or someone. So learning is innate, I mentioned, and it's going to happen one way or another. And learning, when I say education, I'm not just talking about schooling, going to school. I'm talking about like learning for ourselves and reading books and having discussions, watching PBS or some documentaries on Netflix, and getting Kindle books or ordering books, as I do. So education is challenging, right? It is challenging because it can create some kind of discomfort. But guess what? I mean, a lot of people tell me like, "Oh man, I don't know, it's kind of tough." We're the same people who go to the gym sweating, making all sorts of pain, sounds of pain and distress, like and breathing heavily, and they see the good. Oh yeah, man, it's like no pain, no gain. I'm like, oh, it's the same thing with your mind, bro, sister. So I see it in that way. There will be some challenges, just like in terms of effort. There's going to be challenges, right? You might be tired, trying to stay up, getting dizzy. It always happens. You're trying to read. Sometimes it happens to me. I'm reading, and then it's like, just like I find the time to catch up on that sleep I knew I needed. So that happens, and obviously that involves our lifestyles. Something that each of us individually have to consider. But so that comes with anything we do, finding time to do it. And obviously, if we find it fun and rewarding immediately, then we don't mind working through it, especially when we are targeting a certain kind of gratification. But just like working out in the gym, just like working out in the gym, all that stuff could be rewarding as well. And you might not see it, through your tank tops, but you would definitely see it in the way people respond to you, in the way that you could benefit other human beings and understanding them, or in the way that you could impact society via policies. Right? The effects are very real. The effects are very, very, very real. So I urge you to consider that. Let me give another offering for you to continue to learn. And again, if I'm preaching to the choir, just give me a hallelujah and make sure you spread the gospel. Okay, spread the good word, the faith of humanity. One thing too, when I say learning, I'm talking about a deep learning, not just your favorite novel, not just your favorite writer on a particular social political issue, right? I have my favorite philosophers, one of my Adlers, my Aristotle, Descartes, and others that I like to read. Kwame Appiah, the Cosmopolitan. There are quite a few people I like to read, and would just read over and over and over for eternity if I could. But I'm talking about reading beyond, again, the beyond my garden of knowledge, the garden that I'm grooming. We have to get our passports for the world of ideas, and we have to visit the world of ideas. The ideas, we have to go to. Hold on a second. We have to take a trip to the world of ideas. We have to take a trip to the world of ideas, and that world is not going to consist of ideas that we are familiar with. It's not going to be filled with ideas that we necessarily even enjoy or like. So, but the importance of that is going to give us wisdom and insight about our predicament, about our scenario. It can expand our understanding of the situations that many other people are in, people that we so often, too often, condemn without even knowing much about them. And so the world of ideas is like, I always like to use it, use another metaphor. It's sort of a multivitamin, and it can help us in so many aspects of being a social creature. And as a social creature, we know that, as Maslow reminds us, we want a place to sleep, we want food to eat, right? We want family and friends. We want to, feel good and, contribute to society in some major way. And we all need information for that, right? The world of ideas helps us to do those things. But also, there's another layer of our social existence, or existence as social beings. Because out of that, we are political beings. And there's a whole realm of there's a whole realm of existence and as a political animal. What I mean to say that there's choices we have to make about resources, about ownership, about what's right and what's wrong, the do's and don'ts. I mean, even just something as simple as, moving from one particular place to another particular place. The rules of engagement towards each other. People have different rules of engagement. People have existed separate from each other for thousands of years, and have come to understand the world very differently. And it would be a shame to just condemn somebody or to say that they're inferior because they do things differently, right? And it'd be even more of a shame to just like refuse to even understand what those differences are. And we see the rotten fruit of that kind of thinking. Racism is the most infamous one. So, again, the third point, the world of ideas. We have to visit the world of ideas. In this world of ideas, we will come in contact with ways of thinking that are not our own, that are very uncomfortable, that we are very, very much unfamiliar with. And it is vital to the development of human civilization, particularly in American society. It is very, very vital. Very, very vital. I mean, listen, let me tell you, folk, right now. We, as citizens, are very much partly responsible, to the extent that we don't do anything, or whatever we do, for the actions of our society. Given that this country, it has so much influence in the world, and that for a large part of its decisions are made based on the either complacency or urgency of its voting constituency, we are partly responsible. So it is very much important for us to be informed on a lot of these critical issues in the world of ideas. That's why, a course such as history and culture, or, a course on world religions, for example, is very important. It's very important. I've met people who said, I already told you about the dude who told me he don't need to learn about my history, right? This guy telling me about he don't need to learn about my history, but the history of the country that he's living in is my history. And that unfortunately cultivates a certain kind of mindset that he has, because he's unaware of the violence that his ignorance is acting out at me and others. Ain't that a shame? It's a shame. It's sad. And if we continue to do that, then it's just horrible. It's just horrible. So let me move on. So another thing. So for those of you who just chimed in on the podcast, it's good to see y'all here. I'm talking about don't be afraid to continue to learn. And, I'm trying to make the case that though it sounds like a silly statement to make, because like who would be afraid to learn? Like learning is just obviously good. So we think everybody would think that way, but it's not true. Just to recap, two issues with that is two issues that people could throw back at me as a response is, one, well, who are you to tell me to continue to learn something? Are you just, saying you want me to learn something that you want me to learn? What if I have an understanding of the world that is accurate, that is truth, that is ultimate truth? Who are you going to tell me to learn more? That's just a slick way of avoiding or confronting my truth just to get me to acquiesce to your truth. I admit that is a way that, my claim that people are afraid to learn could be taken, especially on the religious front. So that's the recap on that one. Now, I'm going to give this last 3 points, and I'll recap all these points We'll call it a night, and I want to I appreciate all of you for chiming in. Like I said before, if I'm preaching to the choir, if all of you are avid readers, if all of you are hungry learners, then you're the choir. Just give me an amen or hallelujah, or get your shout on. So the next point I want to make, yes, listen, I'm not saying education is a panacea. Like I said before, it's a multivitamin. It's going to help us. It's not going to solve everything, right? Just because you know more doesn't mean that you're just going to become a Mr. Goody or Mrs. Goody Two Shoes. Nah, I'm not saying that. I mean, there are other facets of our existence. We have urges, and self-restraint is an issue. It's people got to learn that, and some people don't learn it. People do things that they know is wrong, and what can I say? Just because they know is wrong doesn't mean they're not going to do it. Some people reluctantly do evil things, like, oh, I know I shouldn't do this, but I just have this urge, and they do it, and it goes, I'm sorry, or somebody or something told me to do it. So education is not a panacea, but it's a multivitamin that we all should take, which is why I agree that this should be universal education, because there's a lot of issues. I mean, can we just clean up all the issues that are derived from like a lack of exposure? I mean, how much we can clean up because of a lack of exposure. And just to borrow from the Bible a little bit, and I'm not, I'm no preacher, nothing like that, none of that stuff. But when Christ said to his Father, forgive them for they know not what they do, I like this concept, right? That some people don't know what they're doing. Now, to determine whether or not they do know what they're doing, we don't want that to be an excuse. Somebody comes and robs me, like, I knew not what I was doing, forgive me, right? But I think if we put it in the right context, we can find it to be very useful. Clear example for our youth. Now, youth are born into a social world, and in this social world is a social environment, and they're exposed to certain ideas, and they feed on these ideas because, as I said, learning is innate. We're going to learn. It's just a matter of what you learn, who you learn it from, how well you learn. We all think. It's just a matter of if you're going to think critically or not. So that's going to happen. So there are individuals. Our youth is a clear example of this, where some people don't really know what they're doing. Now, you have a lot of adults, because a lot of adults may have developed certain habits and don't know any others, or haven't been challenged. So it gets a little tricky, right? Obviously, it depends on, if a person's doing something wrong, like how devastating their actions are on, against someone, how violent the actions are. Then, obviously we got certain scenarios. Always put things in context. I find myself needing to always remind people to contextualize what I say, because we don't contextualize a lot, and I'm generalizing on purpose. We, as people, there's a, I don't know what's going on, but there's a lack of contextualizing, and I probably want to do a whole talk on that one day. But let me bring myself back in. Finally, I hinted at this before. College is not the only place to learn. So just because you didn't go to college, or even for those who actually went to college, just because you went to college doesn't mean your learning stopped and that's the only place to learn. All right, school has it has two main purposes. I say it has two purposes. Whether or not schools are aware of it themselves, or instructors are aware of themselves, or you're aware of it. I mean, there is the specific information that we tend to get for a particular trade or craft, but then there's also this training to be a human being, to understand that humans existed before you, humans are coexisting with you right now that you'll never meet. Other human beings have contributed to the society in so many ways that you don't know. In fact, and my favorite one is that many of us have just adopted or were taught the ideas of others, and we have no idea who are the authors of of our actions, of the principles that guide our thinking, of the frameworks that shape our awareness, that influence our the way we feel, the way we respond to things. I can go on and on in that. Right? So we have certain frameworks. So I gotta bounce now, y'all. Time is about up. And I want to say in final, be a lifelong learner. And this is especially for those of you who already get this. Continue to be a lifelong learner. I have to say goodnight to all of you. I want to thank you for chiming into Political Soul Food tonight. I'll be back on tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, up to Thursday. That's our schedule, Monday through Thursday, and maybe, over the weekend. I want to thank you all for chiming in. If you got more questions, you want to follow up on this discussion, let me know. So, peace out. See ya, IG. See ya, Facebook.